The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, yet there was one place where no ship dared to fly. It was the dark line that marked the beginning of human space. Generations had passed, and countless empires had risen and fallen, but this rule had never changed. Maps of the stars showed that region as empty, a void, but every captain knew it was not empty at all. It was the most dangerous border in the galaxy. Aliens whispered about it in marketplaces and war councils. Soldiers spoke of it with lowered voices, as if even the sound of its name might invite death. No empire placed patrols there. No merchant dared to cross. No one explained it clearly, yet all obeyed the warning as if it was written into their blood. Do not cross into human space. Still, curiosity was stronger than fear for some. On one quiet night, a sleek alien vessel approached that forbidden line. It was crewed by explorers from a proud young race, hungry to prove themselves braver than the rest. They had heard the stories all their lives, but they laughed at them in secret. How could one species frighten the galaxy so completely? Could humans, whose homeworld was rarely seen, command such silence? To them, the warnings sounded like old ghost tales told to scare children. And so, they crossed the border, their engines humming, their eyes shining with arrogance. At first, nothing happened. The stars were the same as before. The vastness of space lay quiet, only the gentle hum of machinery filling the ship. The crew mocked the warnings. C1 said, "There is nothing here but empty skies." But their laughter began to fade when their sensors picked up strange shadows drifting ahead. Slowly, their ship closed the distance, and the shapes became clearer. They were not asteroids. They were not harmless debris. They were ships, dozens of them, hundreds, maybe more, all broken, silent, and dead. Some belonged to species long extinct. Some carried markings of empires still alive, but scarred by history. The wrecks floated like grave markers in the darkness, stretching across the border like a warning line carved in steel. The alien crew fell silent, their screens lit with endless lists of destroyed vessels. Heavy cruisers, mighty battleships, entire fleets gone. Their hulls were torn apart as if ripped open by predators. Some were shattered into fragments. Others still looked whole, but lifeless, drifting tombs filled with corpses frozen in time. The explorers shivered as they realized the truth. The stories had not been lies. Something had happened here, something no one wanted to remember. One of them whispered, "Why leave them here?" It was the question none wanted to answer. Humans had destroyed these ships. Why not clear them away? Why leave this vast graveyard floating at the edge of their territory? Another voice spoke, trembling. Maybe they left them as a sign, a message for anyone who dares to cross. The ship drifted deeper, engines humming quietly as the crew argued. Some wanted to turn back, to flee before the silence broke. Others wanted proof, recordings that would bring glory to their names. Fear battled with pride in every heart, but their pride won for now. They recorded the wrecks, their cameras scanning the ruins of lost fleets. Yet even as they worked, a growing dread pressed against them. The air seemed heavier, the silence louder. Then came the first sound, crackle over the comm system, faint and broken, like voices from the grave. The crew froze as the ghostly noise grew clearer. It was a recording, old but sharp enough to chill their blood, human voices shouting commands, echoing with fury. The words were simple, terrifying in their certainty. Orders to strike, orders to leave none alive. The explorers listened in horror. This was not the sound of defense. This was not survival. This was the sound of hunters at work. The crew's captain tried to calm his team, insisting it was just old signals bouncing in space. But his voice shook as he spoke. More recordings followed, each one colder than the last. A human voice whispered through the static, "No mercy." Another voice, calm and steady, said, "Erase them." The explorers looked at each other with wide eyes. None dared to breathe too loudly. They began to understand what the graveyard meant. These ships had not been defeated in fair battles. They had been executed. The captain ordered the engines to full speed, desperate to leave the wreckage behind. Yet as the ship turned, the crew noticed something else. Among the broken fleets, some ships were not old. They were fresh, their hulls still shining, their flags belonging to races who had disappeared only a few years ago. This was not an ancient warning left by forgotten wars. This was ongoing. Whoever tried to test human space was still being destroyed. The explorers trembled. The galaxy had told them never to cross the border. Now they understood why. The silence was not empty. It was the silence of predators who needed no roar to prove their power. The explorers pressed forward anyway, caught between terror and pride. They had come this far. They wanted to see more. As they crossed deeper into the forbidden zone, the wrecks grew denser, like bones piling higher around the lair of some unseen beast. Every shadow seemed to move. Every silence felt alive. The crew no longer laughed. They no longer mocked the warnings. They only stared into the darkness ahead, waiting for the moment when the humans would finally reveal themselves. And in that moment of dreadful quiet, the border no longer felt like space. It felt like the edge of a hunting ground. The alien ship drifted deeper into the forbidden zone, engines whispering against the heavy silence. Every screen glowed with images of the wrecks they left behind, but ahead lay even more. The graveyard stretched without end, fleets upon fleets, of ships torn apart and left to rot in the darkness. The explorers could hardly believe their eyes. These were not weak vessels. Some were massive dreadnoughts, ships that once ruled star systems. Yet all had fallen here, all broken in the same quiet way. The crew tried to keep working, recording every image, storing every detail, yet their hands shook and their voices quivered. Every ruined ship carried its own story, and none ended with survival. Some hulls still burned faintly, glowing embers in the endless night. Some carried alien flags still clinging to broken masts. Others drifted with shattered weapons, never fired, as if their crews had been silenced before they could even fight. It was not war, it was slaughter. The captain tried to stay calm, telling his crew that these ruins would make them heroes back home. Proof, he said, that the stories were true. Proof that they had braved the place no one dared to enter. Own voice betrayed him. Each time he looked at the wrecks, his throat tightened. For every victory he imagined, he also imagined their own ship, broken and silent, floating forever beside the others. Then the ship's sensors picked up something unusual. Weak signals pulsing from the wrecks, faint but clear enough to track. They were not random noise. They were recordings. The crew hesitated, but curiosity won. They played the first signal. At once, the voices of humans filled the cabin. It was not a distress call. It was not a warning. It was a command. A human officer spoke with a calm, steady tone. Target locked. Fire. No survivors. The crew flinched as the sound echoed through their ship. Another signal followed, more urgent, full of shouting. Human voices roared with battle orders, weapons discharging, metal tearing. The explorers felt their stomachs twist. It was not just war. The tone in the voices was too controlled, too merciless. These were hunters, working with cold efficiency, destroying everything without hesitation. A young crew member whispered, "This is not defense." They were not protecting their borders. They were chasing them down. No one argued. Everyone felt the same chill. The wrecks were not marks of human survival. They were trophies, warnings left behind for the rest of the galaxy to see. As the signals kept coming, the explorers grew restless. Each recording was colder, sharper, as if the voices of ghosts demanded their attention. Pursue them. Do not let them escape. Strike the engines. Leave the wreck. No mercy. Phrase cut like a knife. It was clear the humans never fought to push invaders back. They fought to erase them completely. The captain shut down the audio, his hands trembling. Yet the silence was worse. Every shadow around them felt alive. Every piece of wreckage seemed to watch them. One by one, the crew began to regret their pride. They wanted to turn back, to leave before it was too late. but their pride had carried them too far. To return now without reaching the heart of the graveyard would mean shame. None of their people would believe them without more proof. The ship moved forward again, engines humming like a nervous heartbeat. Soon, they reached a vast open space, larger than any battlefield they had seen before. It was a sea of wreckage. Stretching so far, the stars themselves were hidden. The explorers gasped at the sight. Battleships as large as cities lay broken across the void. Carriers that once held thousands of soldiers were torn apart, their remains scattered like bones. Across the field, entire armadas rested here, silent forever. The crew felt their courage breaking. So many fleets had come here and never returned. What chance did they have? The young ones whispered about turning back, but the captain ordered silence. His pride was all he had left. He told them to record everything, to keep moving, yet his own eyes betrayed fear. His hands would not stop shaking as he gripped the command console. Then came the sound again. But this time it was different. It was not a broken echo from the past. It was clear, sharp, alive. A human voice spoke directly into their comm system, though no ship appeared on their scanners. The voice was low, steady, and without emotion. "You should not be here." The explorers froze. Their blood ran cold. For a moment none could breathe. The captain stammered, asking who was speaking. But no answer came. Only silence heavier than before. The crew searched their sensors desperately, but nothing appeared. No ship, no station, no source of the signal. Yet the voice had been real, close, watching. Panic began to spread. Some demanded the captain turn back. Others whispered that if they fled now, the humans would destroy them anyway. The silence returned, thick and suffocating. Every crew member felt it in their bones. They were not alone in the graveyard. Something was watching. Something alive. The captain finally gave the order to leave, but deep down he knew it was already too late. The graveyard was not just ruins of the past. It was a trap, a warning, a place where human eyes still hunted. The explorers had crossed the line the galaxy had feared for centuries. Now they could only wait to see if they would ever be allowed to leave. The alien ship floated in silence, caught between fear and pride. The voice they had heard still echoed in their minds. It had been calm, cold, and alive. Someone had spoken to them directly inside the graveyard, yet no ship appeared on there. Scanners. The captain stared at his screens in disbelief, demanding scans again and again, but nothing showed. Space seemed empty, yet every heart on board knew the truth. Something was out there, watching. The crew whispered nervously. Some said they should run at once, before the unseen hunter struck. Others argued it was already too late, that fleeing would only provoke the humans into action. The graveyard around them felt closer now, as if every wrecked hull leaned in to watch their fate. The captain clenched his jaw and gave the order to move forward slowly. Fear had taken hold, but his pride still chained him. If he returned home with nothing but a story of a ghostly voice, he would be mocked. If he found proof of living humans, he would be remembered forever. Their engines rumbled quietly as the ship crept deeper into the sea of ruins. Sensors flickered with strange interference, as if the wrecks themselves whispered against the scans. The crew held their breath, waiting for something, anything, to appear. And then it did. A shadow emerged from the dark, sliding silently between the broken ships. At first it looked like another wreck, but then its lights flickered to life. Oh! Plates glimmered faintly, scarred by battles yet still whole. The crew gasped as the shape grew clearer. It was a warship. Old, ancient by design, yet alive. Its body was long and angular, its surface marked with deep scars that spoke of countless battles survived, and like the alien vessels, it was not broken. It moved with purpose, like a predator circling prey. The explorers froze in terror. This was no ghost. This was a human ship. No one dared to speak at first. The captain's mouth opened, but no words came. The human vessel glided closer, silent, deadly, as if it had been waiting for them all along. Every scanner tried to measure it, but the readings twisted and failed. Weapons, too many to count. Shields, strong enough to shatter fleets. Power core. Beyond anything they understood, the more they scanned, the more impossible it became. The alien crew realized the truth. This ship had survived ages because it was never defeated. The human warship did not fire. It only followed, shadowing their every move. No signal came, no weapons discharged. The silence was more frightening than an attack. The alien explorers whispered among themselves, wondering if this was their last moment. Some begged the captain to send a greeting, to show respect. Others insisted on turning back, fleeing before the human vessel decided to strike. Finally, the captain gave in to fear and pride at once. He opened a channel and spoke. His voice shook as he called out to the unknown ship. He begged for peace, explained they meant no harm, offered to turn back. His words echoed through the cabin, but no answer came. The human ship remained silent. Gliding just behind them, close enough that its shadow covered their hull, minutes dragged like hours. The crew's panic grew heavier with each passing breath. Some swore they saw weapons charging on the human vessel. Others claimed it was simply watching. The uncertainty was unbearable. Then, without warning, the comms crackled alive again. A voice, sharp and steady, filled the air. Leave or join the others. The words were simple, calm, and final. They struck harder than any weapon. The crew felt the blood drain from their faces. There was no need to explain what the others meant. The wrecks drifting all around them told that story clearly. Silence followed again, heavier than before. The captain's hands shook as he shut off the comm. His crew stared at him, waiting for an order. Should they flee? Asking for mercy again? The captain's pride screamed for him to stay, to prove his bravery. But his fear screamed louder. He knew what would happen if they lingered. The alien ship turned slowly, engines pushing them back the way they had come. The human warship followed, never straying, never speaking again. It was like a predator herding prey away from its lair. Every second felt like a lifetime. The explorers kept their eyes locked on the shadow that stalked them. No one moved, no one breathed too loudly. Even their own hearts seemed too loud in their ears. But then something changed. As they neared the edge of the graveyard, the scanners flickered again. More shadows stirred among the wrecks. Shapes appeared, faint at first, then clearer. The crew stared in horror. They were not alone. Dozens of human ships began to emerge from the darkness, each scarred, each silent, each alive. They had been there all along, hidden among the ruins. The explorers realized with a sickening dread that the graveyard was not just a warning. It was a shield, hiding an entire fleet. The human warships did not fire. They did not need to. Silent presence was enough. The captain felt his pride collapse completely. There was no glory here, no chance of victory. It's only survival if the humans allowed it. As their ship edged closer to the border, the voice returned one final time. You were warned. The explorers trembled. The message was not just for them. It was for anyone who might hear their story. Humans did not beg for peace. They did not ask for respect. They demanded silence, obedience, and fear. And they always enforced it. The alien ship crossed back over the border, shaking with terror. Behind them, the graveyard remained silent, guarded by shadows that never slept. For the first time, the explorers understood why no one dared to enter human space. It was not empty. It was a hunting ground, and they had barely escaped its jaws. The alien explorers left the graveyard behind, but the memory stayed heavy on their minds. Every crew member sat in silence, each one shaken by the human voice that had spoken to them. None dared to celebrate their survival. The shadow of the warship still lingered in their thoughts, following them even though the scanners now showed only empty space. It felt as if unseen eyes still watched from the darkness, waiting to strike if they strayed too close again. The captain tried to steady his voice as he ordered the recordings to be stored. Proof, he said, proof that they had reached the forbidden zone. Yet deep in his heart, pride no longer mattered. His crew knew it too. They had crossed into a place no one dared to enter, and they had been spared, but not welcomed. The humans. had allowed them to leave because it served a purpose. And the explorers began to realize what that purpose was. As the recordings played back, the truth unfolded piece by piece. The voices of humans in battle, the ruins of fleets, the warnings. Etched into space, they told a story older than the explorers had ever imagined. Long ago, countless empires had tried to take Earth, the human homeworld. Some came for resources, some for conquest, some simply to prove their power, but none had returned. The explorers listened in silence as they pieced it together. Humans had not fought like victims. They had not begged for peace. They had not even settled for defense. Instead, they had turned every invasion into a hunt. When enemies entered human space, they were not pushed back. They were destroyed, erased completely, their fleets shattered and left behind as warnings. The wrecks were not accidents of war. They were messages carved into steel. One crew member whispered what they all feared. They did not protect their world. They punished anyone who dared to touch it. The words hung in the cabin, heavy and final. The recordings gave more proof. One battle log showed humans tracking enemy ships across the stars, never letting them escape. Another captured human voices laughing coldly as they fired. It was not rage. It was not fear. It was certainty. The certainty of hunters who knew they would win. The explorers felt sick as they listened. This was not defense. It was extermination. The captain sat in silence, staring at the wrecks they had passed. His hands trembled as he thought of his own people. His race had always spoken of glory, of bravery, of daring to stand where others would not. Now he saw that such pride meant nothing here. Every empire that had boasted of its strength had left its bones drifting in this graveyard. Why had the humans left those bones floating for all to see? The answer was clear now, to remind the galaxy, to show every species what would happen if they crossed the line. The graveyard was not abandoned. It was a warning written across the stars. No alien dared to erase it. No scavenger dared to approach. Even the strongest empires chose silence instead of war. The crew felt the weight of history pressing down on them. They were not the first to cross the border. They were not the first to hear the warning. But unlike the others, they had been allowed to leave. That made their duty clear. They were meant to carry the story back. They were meant to spread the fear as they discussed in hushed voices. The truth became sharper. Humans did not need to patrol their borders with fleets. They did not need to send ambassadors or issue threats. The graveyard spoke louder than any fleet. The silence of their territory was more terrifying than endless armies. Every alien in the galaxy already knew what lay beyond that line, even if they pretended otherwise. Now the explorers had seen it with their own eyes, and they could never forget. But questions remained. Why did humans stay inside their borders? Why had they not spread outward, claiming more worlds? They had the strength. They had the fury. The crew argued, whispering theories. Some said humans were waiting, preparing for the day they would rise. Again, others believed they had no need for conquest. Perhaps they were content to stay within their space, but ready to destroy anyone who dared to enter. That mystery was worse than any answer. The captain finally spoke, his voice low and grim. They do not expand because they do not have to. The galaxy already belongs to them, in fear. His words silenced the crew completely. They knew he was right. Fear was stronger than weapons. Fear had built a wall around human space. One dared to cross. As the alien ship drifted farther from the graveyard, the explorers felt no relief. Their scanners showed only stars again, but the silence followed them, pressing on their hearts. Every memory of that voice returned, calm and merciless. Leave, or join the others. It was not a warning given in anger. It was not a threat. It was simply a fact. The explorers realized that humans had shaped their reputation carefully. The galaxy thought of them not as neighbors, not as allies, but as executioners. Empires that tried to challenge them no longer existed. Races that dared to test their borders had vanished, leaving only ruins as reminders. And now, these explorers carried the truth. They would return home alive, but they would never be the same. For the first time in their lives, they understood why no alien dared to enter human space. It was not superstition. It was not myth. It was history carved into the stars. Humans had earned their silence with blood, and the galaxy had learned to obey. The captain whispered the words none of them wanted to hear. "We should never have come here," no one argued. Each crew member sat in silence, haunted by the thought of what might happen if the humans decided that mercy had ended, and as their ship carried them away from the border, every heart on board prayed they would never see human space again. The alien ship floated far from the graveyard now, yet no one felt safe. Every crew member sat in silence, haunted by the human voice that had spoken to them. The captain's hands shook as he reviewed the recordings again, but no words brought him comfort. The fear inside his chest grew heavier with each passing moment. The crew had seen too much. They had been allowed to leave when others were not, but the question pressed on every mind: why them? Whispers began to stir in the dark cabin. Some believed they had been spared so they could carry the warning home. Others feared they had been marked, watched by unseen eyes that might strike when the humans chose. The silence outside the ship felt alive. The stars looked colder. No one laughed. No one spoke of glory anymore. Then the sensors flickered again. Strange shadows appeared across the screens. The captain ordered a scan, but the readings came back broken. It was not interference, it was movement. Something vast stirred behind them. The crew held their breath as the shapes grew clearer. They were ships. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Human warships emerged one by one from the darkness, as if the graveyard itself had woken. Their scarred hulls glimmered faintly there, engines burning like the eyes of predators. The alien crew trembled. It thought the graveyard was only wreckage, a warning of the past. Now they realized the truth. Then the graveyard was a mask, hiding a fleet that had never died. The human ships spread across the stars, surrounding the explorers in silence. Weapons glowed faintly, ready but not firing. It was not an attack. It was a judgment. The alien crew could feel it in their bones. They were prey caught in the circle of hunters. The captain tried to stay calm, though his voice cracked. He opened the comms and begged for mercy. He swore they meant no harm, promised they would leave and never return. His words spilled out desperately, but the silence of the human fleet remained unbroken. The crew stared at their screens, waiting for the first strike that would end them. Then the voice returned. It was the same as before, steady, cold, without emotion. "Your kind was warned." The crew froze. No one dared to move. The voice echoed again, sharper this time. "You entered our space. You saw what was left behind. Now you will carry our words." Captain whispered a trembling question. "Will you destroy us?" His voice cracked on the last word. The silence stretched so long, it felt like the stars themselves held their breath. Then the answer came, slow and final. "Not today. But you will not return the same." At that moment, every human ship lit their weapons. Thousands of beams of light burned across the void, locked on the alien vessel. The explorers cried out in terror, certain their death had come, but the weapons did not fire. They only glowed, a wall of destruction ready to strike. At the smallest command, it was a warning written in fire. It's more powerful than any word. The alien crew collapsed in their seats, hearts pounding, sweat pouring down their faces. They understood completely. This was mercy, but it was also a scar. They would live, but they would never forget. Their people would never doubt the humans again. The captain gave the order to retreat, his voice weak, broken by fear. Their engines roared as they pulled away, but the human fleet followed, silent shadows in the dark. The explorers dared not look away from their screens. Every movement felt like a test. Every second stretched into eternity. The humans could destroy them at any moment, yet they did not. At last, the alien ship crossed back over the border. The human fleet stopped. One by one, the warships faded into the darkness, vanishing as if they had never existed. The stars grew empty again, but the explorers knew the truth. They were still there, always there, watching the come, crackled once more before the silence. "Return for good. Carry our warning. Remember our graveyard. Enter again, and you will join it." The channel closed. The stars went quiet. The alien ship drifted alone in the vastness of space. But no one on board felt alone. They felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes pressing against their backs. The crew sat in silence for hours, unable to speak. Some wept quietly. Others stared blankly into the void, their minds broken by the terror of what they had seen. Even the captain, once proud and bold, sat hunched over the console, his eyes empty. Glory no longer mattered. Curiosity no longer mattered. Only survival remained. The explorers understood now why no alien dared to enter human space. It was not myth. It was not superstition. It was truth, carved into stars and bones. Humans did not need to chase outsiders. Outsiders came on their own, blinded by arrogance, and the humans answered the same way every time, with silence. With fire, with finality, as the alien ship sped away into safer skies, the crew knew their lives had changed forever. They had crossed into the hunting ground of mankind and returned alive, but scarred. They had been spared, but only so the galaxy would hear their story. And when they told it, no one would ever doubt why human space was silent, why it remained untouched. The last words of the human voice echoed endlessly in their minds. Not today. It was not mercy. It was a reminder. A reminder that death would come if the border was ever crossed again. The alien ship traveled in silence, far from human space now, but no one on board felt free. The crew sat pale and broken, each haunted by the graveyard and the fleet of shadows that had surrounded them. Their captain gave no speeches. Once proud, the voice was gone, replaced by heavy silence. Even when they passed into safe territory, no one cheered. Survival felt like punishment, not victory. Days later, when the explorers finally reached their homeworld, the crew was brought before their leaders. The Great Council had gathered, eager to hear what their people had discovered beyond the forbidden border. Generals leaned forward, expecting stories of weakness, of myths broken, of humans finally revealed as fragile. Scholars waited with pens, ready, eager to record what no one else dared to seek. The explorers stood before them, but none could find words at first. Their mouths were dry, their eyes looked hollow. The captain finally spoke. His voice was low, strained by memory. He told them of the graveyard of fleets torn apart and left to drift forever at the border. He told them of the voices, the recordings of human orders, each one cold and merciless. He described the warship that had followed them, scarred yet, alive, older than their empire itself. And then he spoke of the fleet that had emerged, countless ships hidden among the wrecks. Silent and waiting, the council listened in silence, their pride fading with every word. Some shook their heads, refusing to believe. Others whispered that the explorers were lying, broken by fear. But then the captain played the recordings. The voices of humans filled the chamber, calm commands. Ruthless orders, no mercy, erase them, leave or join the others. The words echoed like thunder, and the chamber fell into terrified quiet. The leaders could not deny it. The proof was undeniable. The humans had not been hiding in weakness. They had been waiting, watching, hunting. Every wrecked fleet at their border was not a sign of survival. It was a sign of extermination. The youngest of the explorers, who had trembled through every moment of the journey, finally spoke. Her voice cracked as she said, "They spared us only to spread their warning. We were meant to see. We were meant to tell you." The council stared at her, then at one another. Some wanted to prepare for war, to prove that their empire would not bow to fear. But the recording silenced even their bravest boasts. They all heard the certainty in the human voices. These were not fighters struggling to live. These were predators in control. No empire had defeated them. None ever would. The news spread quickly. Across the galaxy, word of the explorer's journey carried like fire. Races that had once doubted the stories now trembled. Merchants who had dreamed of rich trade routes through human territory abandoned their plans. Even warlike empires who had laughed at human silence fell quiet. The galaxy listened, and the galaxy believed. From that day forward, no ship crossed the line again. No fleet tested the graveyard. No scout dared to enter human space. The silence remained, but now it was heavier than before. It was no longer mystery, it was truth. Truth the galaxy could not ignore. The explorers lived on, but their lives were never the same. Some could not sleep without hearing the voice again. Some could not eat without seeing the wrecks in their minds. The youngest never laughed again. She carried the words in her heart, words that would not fade. Not today. The captain grew old with the weight of his failure. He had sought glory and brought back terror. His name was remembered not as a hero, but as the one who proved what the galaxy had always feared. When he died, his last words were a whisper to no one. We should never have gone. And still, beyond the border, the graveyard waited. The wrecks floated silently, their broken hulls catching the faint light of distant suns. Hidden among them, the human fleet watched, eternal and patient. They did not need to move. They did not need to speak. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Generations later, when young cadets asked their teachers why no one dared to enter human space, the answer was simple and final. Because we know what waits there. Cadets pressed further, curious, daring to question. What waits there? They asked. And the teacher's voice would always drop low, filled with fear and respect. Annihilation. That is what humans are. Not neighbors, not allies, not conquerors. They are executioners. Cross their border, and you will not return. The silence of human space became the loudest sound in the galaxy. It needed no fleets, no speeches, no wars. The graveyard spoke for them. Explorer's tale carried their warning forever. From that day onward, no alien dared to enter human space. And now, the galaxy finally knew why.